All right, welcome. In the crypto markets, it's just so noisy, right? Trying to find a real signal can feel, well, pretty much impossible. But what if one of the cleanest, most predictive indicators wasn't about hype or memes, but about who's actually building stuff? Today, we're going to dig into how developer activity can show you exactly where the smart money is going to go next.
Yeah, this quote, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It's such a powerful idea because it points to this fundamental link between the health of a project's developer community and its actual long-term value. So forget about the day-to-day price swings for a second. This is about the engine of innovation that's humming or sputtering under the hood.
And that really brings us to our core thesis here. Capital follows code. It's a super simple idea, but the implications are huge. It means that at the end of the day, money, users, and value, all of it, is going to flow to the ecosystems where the real work, the real building, is actually getting done.
Okay, so here's the thing you really got to get. While metrics like total value locked, or TVL, can tell you where capital is parked right now, tracking developer participation can tell you where it's probably going tomorrow. You're basically shifting from a lagging indicator to a leading one. And that, my friends, is a massive edge for any investor.
So what happens when the builders just up and leave? What does that actually look like? Well, it's like a domino effect. First, shipping new features slows to a crawl. That means the pipeline for new apps gets thinner and thinner, which gives new users fewer reasons to even show up. Then the network effects start to weaken, demand for block space gets soft, and you can bet that any big partnerships get put on ice. And finally, you see the liquidity, which is always chasing the next hot thing, start to pack its bags and move somewhere else.
Now, this whole collapse, it's not random at all. It's actually part of a really powerful feedback loop that can either build incredible momentum or send a project spiraling downwards.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly, the two paths a network can take. Over on the left, you've got the death spiral. Fewer devs means fewer apps, which leads to fewer users and weaker incentives for anyone to stick around, causing, you guessed it, even more developers to leave. But then you flip it, and you see the magic happen on the right. This is the virtuous cycle. Great tools attract more developers, who built more cool apps, which brings in more users, which strengthens the incentives for even more builders to come join the party. This is how ecosystems get that explosive exponential growth.
And this quote right here, man, it just perfectly sums up what happens to the story of a project. When a network gets trapped in that vicious cycle, people stop talking about game-changing innovation. The narrative shifts to just keeping the lights on. It becomes about maintenance and trying to squeeze out a little bit of yield. The excitement is gone, and so is that speculative premium.
It all really boils down to something we can call retention economics. Think about it. Developers are smart people. They're rational. They aren't just building for fun. They're making the calculated bet with their most valuable asset, their time. They're going to go where they can ship things quickly, where the documentation is actually helpful, where the network is secure, and where there's a real shot at getting funded. If those things aren't there, they're gone.
Okay, so the theory makes sense, right? But how do you actually use this stuff? This next part is all about the practical data. We're shifting gears from the why to the how. We're going to give you a toolkit to track this signal for yourself.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question, right? It's one thing to say, follow the developers, but where exactly are their footprints? How do you find them?
So here's your cheat sheet. This is the stuff you should be watching. Things like the number of monthly active code repositories and unique contributors, that's a great start. You can also feel the pulse of a network by looking at how often its core software gets updated or how quickly important bug fixes are getting merged. But don't just stop there. The off-chain signals can be even more powerful. I'm talking about things like tracking how many developer grants actually turn into a real shipped product, or, and this is a big one, noticing when top-tier teams start migrating from one chain to another.
And here's the kicker, the real payoff. This isn't just kind of interesting data, it is predictive. A real trend up or down in these developer metrics, well, it often shows up weeks before you see big shifts in TVL, and sometimes months before the market fully wakes up and reprices the asset. It's like having an early warning system, for real.
All right, so you've got the signal. You know what to look for. Now what? How do you actually fold this into a real investment strategy? Let's put this signal to work.
So let's say you spot it. You see developer activity starting to dip. You got to have a game plan. First, you have to adjust your models. That means haircutting your revenue assumptions and being way more conservative. Second, you need to reclassify the asset in your own mind. It's not a hyper-growth play anymore. Maybe it's a value play, or a yield play, or maybe it's nothing. And third, if the core problems are getting fixed, it's time to start scaling back your exposure.
But hey, it's not always a death spiral. Networks can absolutely turn things around. The signs of a recovery are basically the opposite of the problems. You want to be on the lookout for the launch of some amazing new developer tools that get people excited again. A clear public roadmap that the team is actually hitting. A governance process that's responsive and not stuck in the mud. And, critically, partnerships that bring in real users, not just a press release headline.
So when you boil it all down, the bottom line is this. You could ignore developer activity for a little while, sure, but the market will not ignore it forever. Eventually, the cost of losing your builders, that massive opportunity cost, it gets priced in. At the end of the day, capital is going to flow to the ecosystems that attract talent and actually ship things.
And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. A really important question you should be asking yourself when you look at your own holdings. In a market that is just full of noise and hype and crazy narratives, is your portfolio listening to the developers,